About a year ago, we had the chance to feature the 2018 Subaru Impreza sedan as the tech trim with the EyeSight package, and I think it, for the most part, represented what most Canadians would be looking for in this car. But we wanted to see what was different with the hatchback and at the top end trim without going to the super enthusiast grade vehicle. Our snapshot is on this 2019 Subaru Impreza Sport-tech with the EyeSight package and as a hatchback. Now, we're not going to go over everything about this vehicle, but we're going to go over what's important and what you need to know if you're in the market for a $32,000 compact all-wheel drive hatchback. Now, I hope you'll bear with me. The sun isn't cooperating today. It's actually pretty strong, and our camera equipment doesn't cope super well with it. And because the clouds are moving over, it's going to change a little bit. I'm hoping it'll look okay. But no matter what I do, it's going to be better than last year's episode. I watched it before filming this, and my God, man, like, I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I think I've gotten a lot better since last year. And so is the car. Even though nothing's really changed, I kind of like this one a little bit more than the one we had last year. Now, we did have a lot of people in the comments from the United States complain that we didn't have the sport trim, yet we said it was the sport trim. Please keep in mind, and I have to say this all the time when it comes to any vehicle we do, this is a Canadian spec'd vehicle. In the United States, you have different kits. This happens a lot, especially in the compact car segment, where we'll get something completely different, they'll give it a different name, and you guys down in the States will have something vastly different as well. So up here, this is a Sport-tech, sport-tech with the EyeSight package. Whatever you guys get down in the US is probably different. I don't know about it because I don't live there. So we're only talking about this car. Now, there are just basically two cosmetic changes with this vehicle on the outside. The front grille is all black. Last year it had chrome along the center where the Subaru badge is, so that's changed a little bit. Paint color is black instead of the blue. And then out back, obviously, we have the hatchback, so the rear dimensions are a little different. The vehicle overall is shorter, but you have more cargo volume because of the hatchback. But what else is different about this car? Not a whole lot. There's no changes for 2019. You still have adaptive LED headlights with regular halogen fog lights at the bottom. Wiper blade de-icers up top, which doesn't help us on a day like today, but they're nice to have. The full suite of safety tech through the Subaru EyeSight system, so things like blind spot monitoring, forward collision warning, active cruise control with stop and go, lane keep assist, forward obstruction warning, and rear cross traffic alert all come on this vehicle. You also have a backup camera as well. We've talked about a lot of that stuff, not only on the 2018 Impreza that we did, but essentially the tech is the same from the Forester and the Ascent that we did before. And just like the Ascent, this is built in Lafayette, Indiana. So this is a US built vehicle from a Japanese manufacturer. But as I mentioned, since the only real difference with this is the trim and the fact that this is a hatchback, it's just the back end stuff that changes a little bit. Design is pretty consistent from what we saw last year, but again, it's in a different format, which is why I want to jump inside now, because that's where the biggest changes are now that we have the Sport-tech trim. The tech is what we added on from last year. So I want to go over the interior features, and then we'll take it on a road test and go over everything else you need to know if you're in the market for the Subaru Impreza. So there are a few changes on the inside here when it comes to the Sport-tech trim. Like I mentioned, this is the tech portion of it, which adds some extra stuff to it. You do have the leather seating all throughout, same color that we had last year, so it's a good comparison if you do watch that video again. They're about the same. I do feel that you're still a little firm in them. You don't sink in too much. Sitting position is decent enough, but again, probably on longer drives it might be a little tiring. The rest of the interior layout is exactly what we've seen with other vehicles from Subaru, especially considering we've driven the 18 Impreza. Nothing's changed for that. The only tech changes, you have navigation now. It's a nice plus. Dual zone automatic climate control instead of single zone. Again, a nice little plus. Harmon kardon audio, an 8-speaker system. It sounds pretty good, pretty comparable to other systems in this segment, something like the Chevrolet Cruze that we featured. They're pretty much on par. Other features to note, a high and low mode for the heated seats, a heated steering wheel, all the controls on the steering wheel for things like adaptive cruise control, volume, and track skip. And then you've got the triple screen setup, which we've talked about pretty much in depth. 8 inches for the infotainment system, 6.3 when it comes to the little information display above it, and 4.2 in the color dash screen. Aside from that though, this is about as fully loaded as you can get without going up to the WRX or STI. I think it's going to work for most people, especially at this top end trim. You do get most of the stuff that you would get from other competing vehicles, but you don't have LED interior lighting, there's no HomeLink, there's no panoramic sunroof, there are no vents in the center tunnel for the back seat passengers, and no rear heated seats. So again, you get some of the stuff going on, but not quite everything. But to be fair, Subaru did announce new vehicles this year for 2020, so we're probably expecting to see an update to the Impreza within the next 12 months. But that's about it for the interior. Let's take it on a road test, see how the 152 horsepower Boxer engine performs with the CVT and all-wheel drive, and everything else you need to know in the spring when it comes to the Subaru Impreza. We didn't do any performance stuff last time, so let's give it a shot from a dig. No manual mode, I don't like it. We're going to go from a dig. All-wheel drive certainly kicks this thing into high gear. Transmission goes forever. 100. So not too bad. I'd say it probably felt a little bit quicker than a couple weeks ago, depending on when you're watching this, when we did the Volkswagen Golf all-track. That was also all-wheel drive. A little bit more power than you get on this, but it had a DSG, so the shifts were real shifts, and I felt it was a little sportier. But one of the benefits of us being able to do our snapshot is to be able to talk about this car in the spring. Last year we did it in the winter, had sort of on and off conditions, so we were able to do a little bit of winter testing, but now I've got it in the spring, and honestly, my opinion on the car has not changed a whole lot. I mean, I still feel that it's a decent vehicle for people who are looking to have all-wheel drive. They want to have a Subaru. There aren't a lot of options now. Mazda 3 is one of them. We are hoping to do a repeat showdown for what we did last year. I was actually supposed to film it this week, but my schedule just did not work out. Unforeseen circumstances caused me to not be able to film it. But I'm hoping within the next little bit we'll be able to put out a showdown with the Mazda 3 all-wheel drive and this. So there's not a lot of option if you're looking in the consumer segment. And yeah, I mean, it's not the most enthusiast grade driving experience, especially with the CVT. I think that's what lets it down the most, because if you put it into manual shift mode, the shifter doesn't do anything. You have to do it with the paddles. I mean, they're not real gears. It's kind of like what we talked about when we did the Countryman John Cooper Works versus the Nismo Juke. It also used the CVT, and it just wasn't that exciting. Same thing with this. They can call it a sport all they want. They can put the little carbon fiber trim decals on the tachometer and speedometer and around the door, but it doesn't really make it that sporty because the driving dynamics just aren't quite there. But then again, you're not buying the regular Impreza because you want it to be overly sporty. It's meant to be a safe car to be able to get back and forth to school, to work, get groceries, things like that. It's not meant to be overly quick, and it does a pretty good job for what it is. Now, one thing I noticed after taking this car out is the cup holders. I don't think we talked about them last year, and I don't usually bring them up on other cars unless it's important, but there's nothing to actually hold the cups into place. So when you put your cup in there, if it's a larger cup, like a large, extra large, you go around corners like we're doing right now, your cup's going to be on the floor, and that could be a big problem for some people. I mean, if you like to have your morning coffee and you have twisty roads to go around, you'd be holding your hand where your coffee is the whole time just to make sure that it's there. So if you actually got the 5-speed manual instead of the CVT, you'd be holding your hand here and you'd have to shift and then put your hand back on your drink. It's not super convenient. Now, those beeps they keep hearing, that's just the lane keep system that keeps turning off. There's no lanes here on these roads. The paint is so poorly worn out that the EyeSight system can't see it, which is a bit of a pain just because it's annoying. But I mean, we can talk about the EyeSight system. It works pretty well. We have no issues with it. It certainly helps to have if you want it. You don't need to have it either. You can get this car as is with the Sport-tech trim without the EyeSight package here in Canada. I don't know why you would. And again, this isn't the sportiest alternative that Subaru makes. So I think the safety factor is a big plus. I think people are going to want to have it. But the option is there if people want it. Lastly, I'll just talk about the ride and handling of the car. You know, it goes around the corners pretty well, as we saw in our little slalom test. I don't know, whatever you want to call it, our little curvy area. But for the most part, I mean, the ride is pretty comparable to other compact cars in the segment. The hatchback doesn't feel any different than the sedan that we featured last year. I mean, technically they're the same. It's just smaller length overall, a little bit more storage capacity in the back. Basically the same vehicle. Again, there's no changes for 2019, so we're not really expecting there to be much different, aside from the fact that we're driving it here in the spring rather than in the dead of winter. And that's why I'm not going to go over our likes and dislikes, just because, again, they haven't changed from last year. And it's nice to have the navigation system. I don't have to use Apple CarPlay, which, for me at least, is a plus. I prefer not having to plug my phone in. Headlights work well. Safety stuff on this car is a plus. Those rear anchor bolts in the doors that we've talked about on a number of Subaru vehicles are a big plus. Dislikes, again, the interior is a little conservative. Subaru is going in a slightly different direction with their 2020 models. If the Impreza gets an update for that, then we might see a different interior here, but for some people it works. People who are diehard Subaru enthusiasts will like it. And really, it's going to be the CVT. I don't think we really talked about it too much when we were filming it before. For your average consumer, it's not going to make a huge difference. Fuel economy is not too bad, which we'll talk about just as we completely wrap up, just because we haven't filmed all of that stuff yet. But the CVT isn't really a fun transmission to have, right? It's just kind of, especially when you're driving around. There's no real gears. You put it into manual mode, it really is just, what's the point? Keep it in the automatic mode. Let the car do it for you. Use it to get back and forth to school. Use it as a safe vehicle with all-wheel drive. And that's about it. It does a good job doing what it does, and that's being a Subaru. If you're looking at having a sportier alternative and you want all-wheel drive, there's two options now for you, Mazda 3 and the Golf All-Track. Just to wrap up our snapshot, I want to go over the fuel economy numbers since we started out our test loop a while after driving the Impreza for the first time last year. On our 100 kilometer circuit, we averaged a decent 6.9 liters per 100 kilometers, or 34 US miles per gallon, and 8.2 liters per 100 kilometers, or 28 mpg during our week with the Impreza. It's not the most fuel efficient, but also far from the worst. To see everything else about the Subaru Impreza, we invite you to watch our full spotlight on the 2018, along with an episode of Test Drive Showdown against the 2018 Mazda 3 GT.